Right then, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is absolutely mental. Newcastle United have just thrown away another lead in the dying seconds. And trust me, what happened after the final whistle was properly mental. But before we get to the absolute chaos that kicked off at St James's Park, and believe me, you need to see what Bruno Guimarães did after this match. We've got two other massive stories that are going to affect the Magpies season, so stick with me till the end because the main story is going to blow your mind. We're talking about players storming off, a proper scrap on the pitch, and a problem that Eddie Howe desperately needs to fix before it's too late. News number one, Toon Army injury blow. Alright, let's kick things off with some worrying news from St James's Park. Sandro Tonali picked up a knock during the match against Tottenham, and it's not looking great. So here's what happened. The Italian midfielder had to come off at half-time and didn't return for the second half. Now that's already concerning enough, but what makes it worse is that Eddie Howe and his medical team are still trying to work out exactly what type of injury it is and how serious it might be. After the match, Howe spoke to the press and said Tonali took a knock in the first half, but he genuinely didn't know the extent of the damage or what kind of injury they're dealing with. That's never a good sign when the manager can't give you straight answers, is it? Here's the thing that makes this situation even more frustrating. Newcastle had already rested Bruno Guimarães for this match, and just days before that, they'd rotated Tonali as well. The idea was to keep everyone fresh and firing on all cylinders, but now, with Tonali potentially out injured, Howe's careful rotation plans might have just gone out the window. And let's be honest, the timing couldn't be worse. Newcastle have got Burnley coming up on Saturday, and they need all hands on deck. Tonali has been absolutely crucial for the Magpies since he came back from his suspension. His energy in midfield, his pressing, his ability to win the ball back, it's been vital to how Newcastle play. Without him, they're going to have to shuffle things around again. Maybe Bruno plays more minutes, maybe we see some of the younger lads get a chance, but whatever happens, losing Tonali for any length of time is a proper blow. What really stings is that this injury came in a match where Newcastle threw away 2 points. They were winning twice against Spurs, and both times they couldn't hold on to the lead. So not only did they fail to get the 3 points they desperately needed, but they've potentially lost one of their most important players in the process. Now, everyone at Newcastle will be hoping it's nothing serious. Maybe it's just a minor knock that will keep him out for a week or two at most. But until they get the full assessment done, there's going to be a lot of nervous waiting around Tyneside. The medical staff will be running tests, checking scans, doing all the things they need to do to figure out what's going on. And whilst they're doing that, Eddie Howe will be planning for life without Tonali just in case the news isn't good. Here's what makes it even more annoying for Newcastle fans. Pundits are already having a go at the team for not being more clever with how they managed the game. They had Spurs on the ropes, they were in control, but they couldn't see it through, and now they're paying the price in more ways than one.
News number two, the pitch battle. Now, let's talk about what happened when that final whistle blew, because it was absolutely wild. Picture this, Newcastle have just conceded a last-minute equaliser. The players are devastated, the fans are gutted, and then Cristian Romero, Tottenham's defender who scored both goals, decides to wind everyone up with his celebration. After scoring his second goal in the 95th minute, a bicycle kick no less, Romero walks behind the goal and starts copying Bruno Guimarães' celebration. He puts his hands over his ears, then points to his name on the back of his shirt. Basically, he's taken the mickey out of Bruno in front of the home crowd. Now, as you can imagine, the Newcastle lads were not having any of that. The moment the final whistle went, all hell broke loose. Joelinton and Bruno absolutely lost it. They charged towards Romero, and there was proper pushing and shoving going on all over the pitch. It was basically a South American showdown, with the two Brazilian lads having a right go at the Argentine defender. Other players from both sides got involved trying to break it up. Tottenham's goalkeeper, Guilherme Vicario, came sprinting up from his goal to get stuck in. Spurs players were pulling Romero away, trying to stop him from making things worse. Meanwhile, Newcastle players were having to drag Joelinton back because he looked ready to proper kick off. The whole thing was a mess of angry faces, pointing fingers and heated words. You could see how much it meant to everyone. This wasn't just about the celebration, it was about respect, or in this case, the lack of it. Eventually, after what felt like ages, the players were separated and Romero went over to celebrate with the Tottenham fans who were sat high up in level 7. But the damage was done. Newcastle's players were fuming, and you could understand why. Let's rewind a bit and talk about how Spurs even got that equaliser in the first place. Newcastle had been dreadful at defending set pieces all night long. Both in attack and defence, they just couldn't get it right. In the first half, Sandro Tonali and Lewis Hall were taking corners and free kicks, and honestly, their delivery was shocking. The ball kept going to the wrong places, no one could get on the end of anything, and Spurs were clearing everything with ease. Things didn't get much better after the break either. And then, when it really mattered, Newcastle completely fell apart from a corner. Romero's bicycle kick was brilliant, don't get me wrong, but it should never have got to that point. Eddie Howe wasn't impressed. After the match, he told reporters that Newcastle weren't particularly good on set plays in either box. He even said it was a far cry from how dominant they'd been on set pieces when they beat Everton. That's a proper dig at his own team, and it shows just how disappointed he was. But here's the really controversial bit. Before all of that drama, Newcastle had scored what turned out to be their second goal from a penalty, and let me tell you, it was one of the most debatable decisions you'll ever see. The referee, Thomas Bramall, didn't give it at first. He watched Rodrigo Bentancur and Dan Burn tussling in the box and thought nothing of it, but then VAR got involved and told him to go have another look at the monitor. After watching it back, Bramall decided that Bentancur had been holding Burn and gave Newcastle the penalty. Tottenham were absolutely livid. Their manager, Thomas Frank, was fuming after the match. He said it was never a penalty in a million years, and if decisions like that were given consistently, you'd have 2 penalties every single game. Even some Newcastle fans weren't convinced it was a penalty. And Jonathan Woodgate, who played for both clubs, said on BBC Radio 5 Live that it looked like Dan Burn was climbing all over Bentancur like a heavyweight UFC fighter taking on a featherweight. The Premier League's match manager tried to defend the decision on social media, saying Bentancur clearly wasn't looking at the ball and was committing a holding offence, but loads of people weren't buying it. So you can see why Tottenham was so wound up at the end of the match. They felt hard done by with the penalty decision, then they pulled off a miracle to get a point at the death, and Romero just couldn't help himself with that celebration.
Use number 3, Bruno's fury. Right, here we go. This is the big one. The story that sums up everything that's going wrong for Newcastle United right now. After that final whistle blew and all the pushing and shoving had died down, Bruno Guimarães did something that spoke volumes about how he's feeling. Instead of staying on the pitch to have a word with his teammates or the coaching staff, he absolutely legged it straight down the tunnel. And I'm not talking about a casual walk-off, this was pure anger. His face was like thunder. You could see the frustration, the disappointment, the sheer rage at what had just happened. He didn't want to talk to anyone, he didn't want to be consoled, he just wanted to get away from it all. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe he just needed to do his post-match media duties and that's why he rushed off. But come on, we're not daft. Anyone watching could see that Bruno was absolutely seething and he couldn't bear to stick around and share that pain with everyone else. When he did eventually speak to Premier League Productions, he didn't hold back. He said he was very unhappy and that Newcastle cannot be conceding bicycle kick goals in the last minute of matches. He felt like they'd lost the game rather than drawn it. Here's what really got me. Bruno said that whilst scoring his goal was a great moment for him personally, he would swap everything, the goal, the celebration, the lot, just to have those 3 points. That's the mark of a proper captain right there. He cares more about the team winning than his own glory. But then he said something even more telling. He talked about how everyone needed to defend as if their lives depended on it. He said he felt sad and unhappy for the fans because this isn't the way he wants Newcastle to play. And you could hear the pain in his voice when he said everyone in that dressing room was disappointed. Think about what Bruno's been through this season. He came off the bench in this match because Howe was trying to manage his minutes and keep him fresh. He scored a brilliant goal to put Newcastle ahead. He thought he'd won it for his team. And then, right at the death, it all fell apart. That's gotta hurt, hasn't it? But here's the thing, this isn't the first time it's happened, and that's what's driving Bruno absolutely mental. Let me paint you a picture of just how bad Newcastle's game management has been this season. That goal they conceded to Romero, that was the 5th stoppage time goal they've let in this season. 5th. Can you believe that? It's not just about this match against Spurs either. Newcastle have been throwing away leads left, right and centre all season long. At home, they've blown leads against Liverpool and Arsenal. Away from home, they couldn't hold on against West Ham or Brentford. And let's not forget what happened in Marseille. Every single time, the same story. Newcastle get themselves in front, everything looks rosy, and then they just can't see it through. It's like they don't know how to close out a game when it matters most. Eddie Howe has got a serious problem on his hands and he needs to sort it out fast because it's not just about dropping points here and there, it's about what this does to the confidence of the players and the belief of the fans. Speaking of players who will be feeling the heat, let's talk about Aaron Ramsdale for a second. The former Arsenal goalkeeper is back between the sticks for Newcastle whilst Nick Pope is out injured until Boxing Day. This was supposed to be his chance to prove he deserves to be number 1. But here's a brutal stat for you. Against Spurs, Ramsdale didn't make a single save. Not one. Tottenham had 2 shots on target and both of them ended up in the back of the net. That's not the kind of record that's going to convince anyone you're the man for the job. What made it worse was his role in the second goal. Ramsdale came out to claim a cross, but could only punch it straight to Romero. And what happened next was chaos. Newcastle's defenders went down like dominoes in the penalty area, and Romero was left with a free shot at goal. Now, I'm not saying it was all Ramsdale's fault. The defending was shocking from everyone, but when you're a goalkeeper trying to establish yourself as the first choice, you can't be making mistakes like that. It's a brutal world for keepers, and Ramsdale found that out the hard way. Just a week earlier, Nick Pope made an error in Marseille that cost Newcastle. Now Ramsdale made a mistake that's cost them 2 points at home. The goalkeeping situation at Newcastle is becoming a proper concern. But let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Newcastle finished 7th last season and qualified for Europe. This season, they're sat in 13th. 13th! That's nowhere near good enough for a club with their ambitions and their squad quality. If Newcastle had held on to beat Spurs, they'd have climbed up to 7th and been right back in the mix for European qualification. Instead, they're stuck in mid-table mediocrity, and the gap to the top 5 is getting bigger with every dropped point. The frustrating thing is that Newcastle aren't playing badly. They're creating chances, they're getting themselves in front, they're competing with the big teams, but they just can't finish the job. And in the Premier League, that's the difference between success and failure. Eddie Howe knows this. You could see it in his face after the match. He looked deflated, disappointed, and probably a bit desperate for answers, because he's tried rotating players to keep them fresh, he's tried different formations, he's tried everything he can think of, but the same problems keep cropping up. The question now is, how do they fix it? How did Newcastle learn to hold on to leads and see games out when it matters most? Because until they sort that out, they're going nowhere fast. Bruno Guimarães storming down that tunnel wasn't just about one bad result, it was about the accumulation of all these frustrating performances where Newcastle have had victory in their grasp and let it slip away. It was about the feeling that no matter how hard they work or how well they play, they keep shooting themselves in the foot at the crucial moment. And you know what? Bruno's got every right to be angry. He's the captain. He's supposed to lead by example. But what can he do when his team keeps making the same mistakes over and over again? The fans are starting to get restless too. They can see what's happening, they can see the pattern, and they're wondering when it's going to change. Because right now, it feels like Newcastle are stuck in a rut and no one knows how to get them out of it. So there you have it, folks. 3 massive stories from Newcastle United, and none of them are particularly cheerful. Tonali is injured and facing assessment, there was a proper bust-up on the pitch after Romero's cheeky celebration, and Bruno Guimarães is absolutely fuming with how his team keeps throwing away points. The common thread running through all of this? Newcastle can't hold a lead to save their lives. 5 stoppage time goals conceded this season, leads blown against Liverpool, Arsenal, West Ham, Brentford, Marseille, and now Spurs. It's a pattern that's costing them dearly. Eddie Howe has got a lot of thinking to do. His team needs to learn how to be more streetwise, more savvy, more ruthless when they're in front. Because talent alone in the Premier League isn't enough. You need to be able to see games out when it matters most. As for Bruno, well, I reckon we'll be seeing a lot more of that angry, frustrated side of him if things don't improve soon. He's a winner, and right now, Newcastle aren't giving him what he needs. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you enjoyed this breakdown of all the drama from St James's Park, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe for more Newcastle United news and analysis. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Can Newcastle turn this around? Is Eddie Howe under pressure? And was that penalty decision the right call? I want to hear your thoughts. Right, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, and let's hope the Magpies can sort themselves out before it's too late. Cheers!